Alena was again barely holding back her tears. Once again, she believed that everything would still be fine. But Inga and her daughter Svetlana, now they would once again portray Elena in front of her father, a stupid and spoiled girl who was having a hard time going through adolescence. Of course, I knew that puberty was a difficult period. Inga rolled her eyes dramatically in front of her upset husband. But this, Elena is going downhill somewhere. If only you knew how much effort it takes me to keep her in check. This had never happened with Sveta. I know that you do a lot for Elena, and I appreciate you for it, her father said, looking down at the floor. He was ashamed of his daughter, of her supposedly outrageous behavior, and the most offensive thing was that there was no point in explaining it to him. Elena tried many times to convey to her loved one that Inga constantly denigrates her. When her father is not at home, her stepmother humiliates her, overwhelms her with endless errands, does not allow her to study, meet with friends, do her favorite things. But Inga is a virtuoso in manipulating people. And a wonderful actress, too. She always manages to turn her father against his daughter. She chooses such words that after them, all of Elena's explanations and arguments seem to the man to be pathetic excuses and attempts to slander a holy woman who is raising someone else's difficult child. Therefore, now Elena will not even try to prove to her father that she is not guilty of anything. It will not lead to anything. The girl was sitting on her bed, huddled in the very corner and burying her face in a huge teddy bear. It was given to her by her grandmother's neighbor, Dmitry Sergeyevich. Elena was 7 years old then. How delighted she was when she saw her neighbor with a huge toy in his hands. He, as always, entered their house with a wide smile on his face. Oh, that was the most wonderful time. If only she could go back there. Remembering her grandmother, Elena smiled. Yes, the girl endlessly missed her loved one, who loved her and accepted her completely. The grandmother surrounded her only granddaughter with warmth and care, talked to her a lot, often hugged her. But she has not been with Elena for almost 5 years. Grandmother Vera passed away when the girl was 10. And since then, Elena's life has changed a lot. And not for the better. But Elena's childhood was simply wonderful. Despite the fact that the girl did not know her own mother, she felt quite happy under her grandmother's wing. Elena's mother died immediately after she gave birth to a daughter, the first and only long-awaited child. Some unforeseen complications after childbirth. The doctors couldn't do anything. That's how Stepan, Elena's father, ended up with the baby in his arms. He loved his wife very much and couldn't come to his senses for a long time after losing her. Stepan had no idea what to do with the newborn child. He was even afraid to take his daughter in his arms. It's good that his mother was there at that difficult moment. She took the girl into her arms, to the great relief of her confused son, who was completely consumed by his own grief. At first, the grandmother lived in the city apartment of an orphaned family. Elena's mother had long been gone. They died when she was still a student. Stepan worked as a ship mechanic on a fishing vessel and often went on voyages, and he was not particularly eager to take care of the baby. So Elena was in the complete care of her grandmother. At first, the grandmother tried to establish a connection between her daughter and father. She wanted Stepan to take care of the child himself. It was not that it was difficult for the grandmother. No, it was just right. It was necessary. But the man did not want to hear anything. He was in grief, and he blamed his daughter for what happened to his beloved wife. Elena realized this later, when she got older. For a long time, her father believed that it would be better for him and his wife to live without children at all. They would travel, pay all their attention to each other, and be happy. Stepan was very much in love with his young beautiful wife and experienced her loss for a long time and hard. In the end, the grandmother got tired of being the link between Stepan and Elena. She had long wanted to go to her small homeland, to a cozy house under a green roof in the village of Novopetrovka. And she had a lot of business there. A vegetable garden, chickens, cats, and a dog. During the grandmother's prolonged absence, neighbor Dmitry Sergeyevich looked after all this household. Of course, they have a good and warm relationship. Grandma has also helped him out more than once. But it's time to know when to stop. Having made sure that there was no way to get through to her adult son, the grandmother packed up little Elena and went home with her. Stepan was only happy about this turn of events. The baby clearly irritated him, and his very appearance reminded him of the tragedy. In addition, the man soon had to leave on a long voyage, which also made him happy. Waves, communication with colleagues, hard physical labor. Stepan hoped that all this would help him to distract himself from his painful thoughts. Incidentally, this is partly what happened. And the grandmother, with her usual energy, took up the care of her little granddaughter. Diapers, baby clothes, walks with a stroller. She seemed to feel like a young mother again, only now she enjoyed motherhood with full dedication. When her own son Stepan was a baby, the woman did not understand what a joy it was to have a child. She had to deal with a whole bunch of things at once, set up a life in a small village house, finish her studies at a local college, and also work part-time. Those were hard times. Now, the elderly woman gave all her time, all her attention, all her warmth to Elena. Looking at the girl, she felt a mixture of aching tenderness and acute pity. Well, of course, such a tiny one, and now she was left without a mother. And the father, it seems, was not eager to take care of his daughter. The son's behavior was very upsetting to the caring grandmother. But she hoped that she could fix everything. Alena grew up as a sweet and problem-free child. She was rarely sick, did everything on time. She sat up, walked, and spoke. The grandmother could not be more pleased with her. The girl grew up surrounded by friendly people, from whom only warmth and acceptance emanated. First of all, of course, her grandmother. She was the most important person for Elena. Reliable, caring, kind. She would always understand, always support. She opened the world to her granddaughter. She talked to her a lot about everything in the world. She explained complicated things to the little girl. Elena did not remember her grandmother ever brushing off her questions. As it usually happens with adults. You won't understand yet. You'll find out when you grow up. Go away, I don't have time for you now. This had never happened between Granny and Elena. It was as if they understood each other without words. Granny also had friends and neighbors. And they also participated in Elena's upbringing. The girl went to visit them, was friends with their grandchildren. It happened that a flock of children ran from house to house in a crowd. Somewhere they would have breakfast together, somewhere they would have lunch, somewhere they would watch TV together as a crowd. Someone's father would take the honest company to the river or to the forest. It was fun. The girl had a particularly warm relationship with Dmitry Sergeyevich. His house stood opposite Granny's, and the elderly man often came to the neighbor to help her with men's chores. To fix a faucet, fix the roof on the barn, move a wardrobe. And his grandmother fed him delicious pies and treated him to fragrant cutlets. Dmitry Sergeyevich, he was a widower. Elena, hearing this strange word for the first time, frowned thoughtfully, trying to understand what it meant. Grandmother explained that, of course, there was no one to bake pies for the neighbor. Of course, the man did an excellent job of cooking, did not die of hunger, but he never learned the art of baking. Only later did Elena understand that, apparently, the neighbor had more than just friendly feelings for her grandmother. Why not? He was a widower, and the neighbor's husband had also died long ago. But the grandmother, she probably decided to devote her entire life to her granddaughter without being distracted by anything else. The elderly woman had big plans for Elena's future. She spent a lot of time with the girl, putting her whole soul into her, and she believed that she would be with her granddaughter for a long time. And he would educate her and marry her off and even help her with her great-grandchildren. It didn't work out. The girl has the warmest memories of her childhood thanks to her grandmother. Elena especially loved summer. It was a truly fun and carefree time. Dmitry Sergeyevich's granddaughters from the city, Karina and Marina, would come to visit him on vacation. They were Elena's best friends. She waited for them all year long. The girls were inseparable for days. They weren't bored even with the three of them, but they still loved to spend time in the company of other village kids. They would ride bicycles, go to the river and the forest, play hide-and-seek and tag, tell scary stories in the evenings, and play football barefoot. They would crawl home tired, dirty, but happy. Often a flock of children would spend the night at Elena's grandmother's. She never refused her granddaughter if the girl asked to leave someone for the night. There was enough space in the house. The children chatted and giggled all night, but the grandmother did not make comments to them. She understood how fun and great it was. Elena, of course, understood early on that she did not live like other children. Others, they had mothers. Not everyone had fathers, but they did have mothers. Mothers were all sorts, young and quite grown up, beautiful and not so, strict and kind. They were always close to their children, and so were the fathers. Of course, Elena began asking her grandmother questions early on. Well, that's what she had to tell the girl about what happened. Carefully, very carefully, the woman told the baby the story of her birth. Elena didn't know her mother, so she wasn't too upset, especially since her grandmother said that her mother was now in heaven and was helping her daughter from there. It was like a beautiful fairy tale. But from time to time, for some reason, a longing for something beautiful and unrealizable squeezed the child's heart. Elena sometimes imagined what it would be like to live through this or that moment of life if her mother were nearby. However, these thoughts did not particularly disturb the girl while she lived with her grandmother in Novopetrovka. Elena felt warm, comfortable, and good there. Her father, of course, sometimes showed up at her mother's, always came on Elena's birthday with gifts if he was not away on a trip, and at least once every 2 months he visited his family. For Elena, he was a familiar and dear, but practically a stranger, a handsome young man with sad gray eyes, always smart, always beautifully dressed. He showed up with gifts, beautiful dolls, elegant dresses, interesting books. Elena was surprised. How did her father always manage to guess so accurately what she dreamed of? Could he really read her thoughts? Later, the girl realized that this grandmother told her son exactly what he needed to buy for Elena in the city. Her father usually came for a couple of days, less often, for a week or two. He didn't know what to talk about with his daughter. He asked routine questions about school, friends, and hobbies. The girl saw that he wasn't particularly interested in all of this. Not like Dmitry Sergeyevich. He loved listening to Elena's stories about the adventures of village children. He laughed, recalled some episodes from his childhood, unobtrusively gave important advice. The elderly neighbor was simply a wonderful listener. "And what about your father?" He asked only because it was necessary. Elena understood this, even when she was a little girl. The girl really wanted to please her father, to interest him in at least something, to please him in the end. But in vain. All of Elena's attempts were shattered by this man's indifference. He diligently fulfilled his fatherly and sonly duties, transferred money to his mother, bought necessary things for the house, and when he came to visit, he worked in the garden and did repairs. But the father did all this out of a sense of duty. There was no spiritual attachment between him and his daughter. The grandmother tried to raise her son, explaining to him how to behave with a girl. The adults thought that Elena was sleeping, but she heard everything. "Girls, you need your father's attention," the mother explained to her son in a low voice. "She is growing up, maturing. Come more often. Take her to visit or go on vacation together. Show her Moscow, St. Petersburg, relax at the seaside. You know, Mom, I work a lot. I constantly go on trips, earn money. By the way, it's just right for Elena's future. But you often forget about the present," the grandmother sighed sadly. "I don't forget, no. I can see it. I can see how well you are coping. Elena is happy with you. Well, what can I give her? I myself am still in a state of disheveled feelings." Elena, although still very little, realized that she was a burden to her father with her very existence. No, he would not take her on vacation and would not come to her more often. Father. He was better off alone, without her and without Grandma, in his own incomprehensible lonely life. It was offensive. Elena loved her only parent very much. To realize that your father does not need you is scary and unpleasant. The girl even cried a little into her pillow then, but she behaved in the morning as if nothing had happened. And then her father left, hugging his daughter, as always, goodbye. "I'm leaving on a long trip," he warned. "We won't see each other for a long time. I won't be able to come to you on the 1st of September, but I apologize." "It's okay." The girl waved her hand carelessly. She was used to her father being absent during the most important moments of her life, big deal. But her grandmother was always there. It was the summer before Elena's first grade. The girl remembered it well because she had a birthday in August where an important event took place. As always, her grandmother set 2 tables in the garden. One for the children, the other for their parents, grandparents. She always made her granddaughters' birthdays like this, crowded, cheerful, bright. The woman herself received great pleasure from communicating with good people. Both Elena and her grandmother had been looking forward to this holiday all year. Dmitry Sergeyevich showed up a little later than the other guests. He gave Elena a huge teddy bear, which his granddaughters, Karina and Marina, helped him choose. Elena was delighted to see the plush animal. She had never had such huge toys before. "Happy birthday!" Karina and Marina rushed to hug the birthday girl. "Thank you." Elena clapped her hands. "What else does Dmitry Sergeyevich have in his hands?" "Well, I recently found a guitar in the attic. I was sorting through things, thinking about throwing away the extra junk, and I came across this instrument." "Sergeyik, I'd forgotten that you're a musician." The grandmother rejoiced. "Since when have you not played?" "Probably since your wife died, and I haven't picked up a guitar." "Yes, it's been about 15 years, I suppose." The neighbor nodded. Sadness flashed in his eyes for a moment. "I'd forgotten about the guitar. And then suddenly I found it. I remembered." "Play something for us," one of the adult guests asked. "Play, play," the kids chimed in. Karina and Marina were learning to be proud next to their grandfather. Of course, Dmitry Sergeyevich had suddenly turned into the star of the party. Look how everyone was looking at him. Look how everyone was begging him. "Well, what should I play for you? Ditties, or what?" the man asked. Everyone began to murmur approvingly. Then Dmitry Sergeyevich took a more comfortable grip on the guitar and struck the strings with his fingers. And some magic began. Melodic sounds filled the garden. Elena looked at her neighbor, her mouth open in surprise. "How does he do it? How is this beautiful melody born?" The guests fell silent, looking at Dmitry Sergeyevich. "Well, what's wrong? Let's sing. Who's first? Who's the bravest?" The mother of Lenka, the neighbor's boy, one of Elena's friends. She started singing a ditty in a deep bass voice. She sang something about a millionaire who was like a calf. The adults laughed, but Elena didn't delve into the meaning of the ditties. She listened to the melody. The guests got carried away. They ordered more and more new songs from Dmitry Sergeyevich, and he, oddly enough, knew them all. Well, if he didn't know, he quickly picked out the right melodies. The adults sang in a discordant chorus. It was so wonderful, so fun, so beautiful. The kids left the table and started playing hide and seek. Of course, they invited Elena to join them, but she couldn't tear herself away. She kept sitting next to Dmitry Sergeyevich, listening to everything. And then, somehow, she suddenly began to sing along with the adults. She quickly learned the words to the song about the wounded soldier. The guests were singing it for probably the third time. Lenka's mother was the first to notice. "Listen," she suddenly said. "Do you hear how she sings?" The guests fell silent. Elena did too. She was embarrassed to sing alone. Lenka's mother understood this and began singing along with her. It was easier for Elena that way. When the chords died down, there was applause. "Well done." The adults praised Elena. "You sing well." "Not just well," Lenka shook her head. "Mom, the girl has talent. I am telling you this as an employee of our community center. Matveyevna, why did you hide such a treasure from us for so many years?" "Well, I didn't know myself," the proud grandmother smiled. Since then, Dmitry Sergeyevich became an even more frequent guest at the grandmother and granddaughter's house. And Elena herself now constantly ran to him. The man taught the girl many cheerful children's songs. Now she constantly sang them everywhere. At home, in the garden, even on the way to the store. Why didn't Elena understand before how great it was to sing? She didn't go to kindergarten, since it was too far to take her. Grandmother didn't work anymore anyway, so her granddaughter grew up with her. Of course, in kindergarten, the music teacher would have noticed Elena's talent earlier. And at home, they almost never had music at home. Grandmother usually turned on audiobooks for herself, not songs. That's how it happened that Elena realized that she really liked singing and music only at the age of 7. "When school starts, we'll send you to the community center to Lenka's mother. She says they have a good choir there. They are even invited to perform in other cities. You'll sing there. You can't bury such talent in the ground." Elena listened to her grandmother and eagerly awaited September. She wanted to go on stage. She wanted to be with people who shared her passions. The future seemed bright and fabulous. And then the girl begged Dmitry Sergeyevich to teach her to play the guitar. At first he refused. "It's too early for you. Your fingers are small. Your hands are weak. You won't even be able to hold such a huge thing." But the neighbor was wrong. Velina immediately managed to hit the right chords on the first try. Marina and Karina even clapped their hands with joy for their friend. "You see, Grandpa, she can do it. You will teach her." "Of course I will." Dmitry Sergeyevich scratched his head in confusion. "Where can I get away from you now?" The neighbor kept his promise. Every day he taught little Elena chords and everything he knew. The student made great progress. Not only did the girl grasp everything on the fly, she also learned to pick out melodies. "Of course, I don't understand this." Dmitry Sergeyevich shared his observations with grandmother Elena. "But she seems to have an exceptional ear. She should go to music school." "That would be good," sighed the grandmother. "But we don't have one in Novopetrovka. There's only a choir here. And you can't go to the city every day." "It's good that they'll at least take her to the choir," Anna promised. "Even though my granddaughter is still young, there are older children singing there." And then the long-awaited 1st of September arrived. Alena still remembered how her grandmother proudly led her by the hand through the village streets to the school assembly. The girl was a little nervous, but it was a joyful excitement. She and her grandmother had carefully prepared for the holiday. The day before, they had gone to the city, where they had spent a long time choosing the most beautiful things. Patent leather shoes, an elegant white blouse, a fluffy dark skirt. In the morning, the grandmother braided Elena's tight braids, which she decorated with large white bows. The woman thrust a beautiful bouquet of gladholai into her granddaughter's hands. Elena still remembered what a delightful aroma they exuded. Passers-by smiled at the grandmother and her smartly dressed granddaughter, congratulating both on the start of their school careers, wished the girl only A's. Elena thanked the people. She knew that there would be a celebration in the evening. Grandma had already invited the neighborhood kids to visit and had made dough for her signature pies the night before. Elena was also looking forward to classes at the community center. She wanted to sing on stage so much. Elena's mother assured her that the teacher would really like Elena. And so it turned out. Pyotr Andreevich highly appreciated the abilities of the new student. True, he did not give her any slack, despite her age. If the girl missed the notes or mixed up the words, he scolded her sternly. But these were trifles. The main thing is that Elena felt in her element. Grandma was worried that her modest granddaughter would be confused in front of the audience. But no, the little singer behaved on stage like a fish in water. At first, Elena was assigned to be a drinker. Then she began to perform solo. Pyotr Andreevich could not get enough of his student. "Such a gift is rare," he would say to his grandmother when she came to pick up her granddaughter. "A real, uncut diamond. She would be in good hands." And what do we have? An ordinary village community center. Elena did not give up her guitar lessons either. It had already become a daily necessity for her. As a student, the girl had long surpassed her neighbor teacher. But she still went to visit Dmitry Sergeyevich every day. Firstly, he had a guitar. Secondly, the neighbor could always give valuable and important advice on playing. But thirdly, none of Elena's friends understood music as well as Dmitry Sergeyevich. He praised her on the merits, noticed some subtleties, and sincerely admired the successes of his little neighbor. Later, living with her father, Elena learned the expression soulmate. Probably, she and Dmitry Sergeyevich were precisely those very soulmates. The neighbor replaced Elena's grandfather, whom she never knew, and maybe even her father in some moments. Time passed. Elena grew up. She studied well at school, performed with the choir, and continued to learn to play the guitar. For her next birthday, her father gave his daughter her own instrument. Of course, the idea for the gift was suggested to him by her grandmother. The girl had everything she needed to be happy. A caring grandmother nearby, understanding kind neighbors, loyal friends. Elena felt loved and at home. She belonged in Novopetrovka and did not even think about moving to her father in the city someday. What to do there? Gray concrete boxes instead of houses, crowds of people rushing somewhere who did not even look at each other. And her father, dear, but completely unfamiliar and distant. People around her often said that there were more prospects in the city, that it would be much more interesting for the girl to grow up there, but Elena felt quite happy and content with her life. Her childhood was warm, sunny, cozy, until that fateful February day when Dmitry Sergeyevich came to pick her up from school for some reason. Elena had been going to school and returning home alone for a long time. At first, her grandmother accompanied her, but from the second grade, Elena became quite independent in this regard. The road was not short, but in the company of her girlfriends and neighbors, time flew by. The girls were walking and chatting about everything under the sun, laughing, discussing the details of the school day, making plans. And then suddenly, there was a knock at the door during literature class, a quiet conversation between the teacher and someone who had not crossed the threshold, and then alarmed Anna Sergeyevna's eyes and her quiet request. "Elena, get ready, your neighbor has come for you." Elena felt everyone in the class stare at her. It was so unusual. Seeing Dmitry Sergeyevich, Elena immediately realized that something terrible had happened. A dull look, a gray complexion. The hands of the always calm man were shaking slightly. "Grandma!" Elena immediately guessed. Her heart was squeezed by an icy hand of anxiety. At that moment, the girl realized that her grandmother was her whole world. The man nodded silently. "What's wrong with her?" "Feeling ill. She was taken to the hospital." Dmitry Sergeyevich told the girl that her grandmother was no longer there, only at home. The woman suddenly felt ill. Her heart seized up. She sat down on a bench near the house, thinking to wait it out. That's how she was found by a neighbor who came in to borrow a couple of eggs. An ambulance was called immediately, but the doctors who arrived could only confirm the fact of death. So Elena was left alone, completely alone in the whole wide world. That night, her neighbor, Klavdia Antonovna, took her in. She and her grandmother were close friends. In the company of a compassionate woman and her grandchildren, Elena did not feel as sad as if she were left alone at home. But the girl was still in some kind of incomprehensible state. Everything that was happening seemed unreal to her. This simply could not happen. How is this? Grandma is gone. And what, will she never be again? Never at all. Her father was on a trip. He was informed, of course, but it took time to get to the mainland. The man did not even have time to attend the funeral organized by the neighbors. During those terrible days, for some reason, Elena did not think about her future. She cried a lot, often talked to the neighbors about her grandmother. They knew and loved her. They said good words about her. This made the girl feel a little better. And then the father arrived. He awkwardly hugged his daughter and said words that made Elena cringe in pain once again. "Well, daughter, are we going to live together in the city now?" "What do you mean in the city? Why in the city?" Elena didn't want to leave Novopetrovka at all. Of course, her grandmother was gone and would never be there again. But there was school here, friends here, neighbors here, and the choir here, after all. Here is Dmitry Sergeyevich, who will always support and comfort you. Here is Klavdia Antonovna, Lenka, and Lenka's mother. And what is there? A cold, alien father who knows nothing at all about his daughter. Yes, he is, for Elena, if it comes down to it, a complete stranger. "I will not go with you," Elena said firmly, moving away from her parent. "I will not go to the city." The man looked at his daughter, blinking his eyes in confusion. He did not know what to say to her in response. The neighbors came to the rescue. Very carefully and gently, they conveyed to Elena the idea that there was no other way out. The neighbors hugged the girl and said that they would also miss her very much. There were tears in the eyes of these people. Women and men, grandmothers and grandfathers, everyone gave her their phone numbers and assured her that they would always be glad to hear from her. Elena cried too. It was hard for her to part with Novopetrovka, but sensitive adults managed to convince the girl that it would have to be done. There was no other way. "Come visit," said Dmitry Sergeyevich, "for the holidays. You and Marinka and Karinka will live with me. What difference does it make to me, 2 girls or 3? But it's all more fun for you." Elena knew that this was not an invitation out of politeness. Dmitry Sergeyevich really sincerely waits for her for the holidays. And from this his soul became at least a little warmer and lighter. So, Elena went to the city. The girl was not the first time in her father's apartment. She and her grandmother sometimes came to visit him. Elena even had her own room here. A bed, a large wardrobe, a desk. Everything a child needs. True, the girl never liked this place. She loved her bedroom in her grandmother's house much more. There were many cozy and important things there. Plush toys, interesting books, an aquarium with colorful fish. But there is no escape. She will have to settle in a new place. The first thing Elena did was put on the bed that same teddy bear that Dmitry Sergeyevich gave her the summer before the first grade. It immediately became cozier. The toy reminded the girl of those happy, carefree times when her grandmother was nearby. Elena's life was completely turned upside down. She had to get used to a lot. A new room, a new school, new faces around. An unfamiliar place, different rules. A father constantly lost in his thoughts. He had transferred to a different position, which did not involve months-long voyages. After all, he now had to be near his daughter all the time. And he really was always there. But only physically. Stepan's thoughts were clearly somewhere far away. Elena saw it. Her father missed the sea, his colleagues and friends, his previous job. And he often complained to an acquaintance that he now received several times less money. "I'm not used to living like this." Counting pennies until payday, the man told one of his former colleagues on the phone. "And here, on the mainland, you can't earn as much as you do at sea." Stepan tried very hard to be a good father. In the mornings, he cooked breakfast for his daughter, and in the evenings he didn't forget to ask Elena how her day went. True, her parents listened to her with half an ear. Elena saw perfectly well that he was not at all interested in her opinion of the teacher or what her classmates had said to her. Stepan bought the girl everything she needed: clothes, food, school supplies, toys. He even enrolled her in a music school. "You used to play the guitar a lot back in Novopetrovka, didn't you? Why don't you pick it up anymore now?" Elena sighed. Yes, indeed, since she hadn't handed it over to her grandmother, she hadn't played anything. Simply because she hadn't been in the mood. So much had piled up. There was some kind of constant chaos in her soul and head. By the end of the day, the girl was so tired of her own thoughts, impressions and emotions that she fell asleep as if she had been knocked down. But did she really need a guitar? But her father's words made Elena remember her favorite instrument. The girl picked up the guitar, ran her fingers over the strings, and she immediately felt better, as if a warmth from the past had blown in. And why hadn't she guessed before that music would calm her down so much? "Don't you want to go to music school?" her father suggested. Elena thought about it and agreed. From an early age, she had heard from those around her that she needed to go there, that in their small village, such talent would not be fully revealed, that Elena needed competent teachers from the city, and here it was. The very opportunity that everyone kept talking about. It took a lot of effort for the father to get his daughter enrolled. Firstly, the school year was already coming to an end. Secondly, the school teachers were not happy with the student's age. The girl turned 10, and the music school accepted 6 and 7-year-olds. But her father knew how to insist on his own. And so, just a couple of days after their conversation, the girl began attending a new educational institution. The school was large, bright. It was not at all like their village community center, the interiors of which had not changed since the Soviet era. Everything was different here. At first, Elena was even afraid of the new teachers. They looked too strict and distant. But when her studies began, the girl realized that she had ended up in the right place. So much new knowledge, so many subtleties. Elena absorbed musical literacy like a sponge and, of course, made great progress. Very soon the teachers began to praise the diligent, talented student. This was very pleasant. The girl gradually settled into life in the city. She made new friends, although she did not develop such warm and almost family-like relationships with anyone as with the guys from Novopetrovsk. But here it was not accepted to be friends like there. It was still great. Elena and her classmates went to the cinema and the skating rink, to a pizzeria, and to entertainment centers. Sometimes they just walked in the park, sometimes they gathered at someone's place. The birthday parties of local children were held completely differently than in the village. These were not heartfelt gatherings of children and adults, but trips to a bowling alley, a trampoline center. The kids were entertained by special people dressed as cartoon characters, animators. It was interesting, of course, and sometimes even funny. But every time Elena remembered her own heartfelt birthdays, full of sincere hugs, they were arranged for her granddaughter by a loving grandmother. How Elena missed and yearned for her. This was not the first big loss in her life. But her mother. The girl did not know her. She was not used to her, and therefore did not worry too much about her absence. Grandmother is a completely different matter. The relationship with her father was polite, even, but somehow strained, even awkward. He seemed to be trying to be an involved parent, but nothing worked out for him. He was not interested in his daughter's thoughts and experiences. He did not understand her at all. Elena did not feel even a small part of the love and warmth that her grandmother gave her, and this was very difficult. The girl was literally freezing. It was good that there was music in her life. Elena saved herself by picking up a guitar and dissolving in melodic sounds. She played what the teachers assigned, and also selected songs that she liked or composed something of her own. With the help of sounds, the girl splashed out her emotions. Longing for her grandmother and her former life, anxiety, the desire to be closer to the only person now dear to her, her father. Music relaxed, calmed, helped her feel more confident. Time passed. The life of the small family gradually improved. Stepan was surprised to discover that his daughter could cook very well. This was unexpected. The children of his friends of that age did not know how to hold a knife in their hands and were considered almost toddlers. Alena was a skilled user of all the kitchen tools, and in her youth she baked mind-blowing pies and cooked aromatic borscht. When the girl first made him and her father a delicious dinner from the leftovers found in the refrigerator, the man was stunned. Returning from work, he caught an aroma as soon as he entered the building, which made him start salivating profusely. But it never occurred to Stepan that these smells were coming from his apartments. "What are you doing? Is this all you?" Stepan was amazed, entering the apartment. "Or did someone come to see us?" "It's me," Elena smiled. She liked the expression of amazement on her parents' face. "My grandmother taught me." Grandmother really taught her granddaughter the art of cooking from an early age. When Elena was still a little girl, she helped her knead the dough. And when she got a little older, the girl learned to use a knife like a seasoned housewife. She even liked to cook. It was almost like music, a real art. Now Elena often cooked for their small family, and she did it with great pleasure. She liked to see how willingly her father devoured her culinary masterpieces. Somehow, the relationship between daughter and father gradually improved. Yes, the adaptation was not easy and took a very long time. Both had to work hard, but in the end, Elena got what she wanted, the warmth and care of a loved one. This did not happen immediately, not suddenly. Her father's heart thawed gradually. The ice crust that bound him first cracked and then slowly fell away, crumbled. One day, Stepan discovered that he was interested in talking to his daughter. She had become quite grown up and sensible, and her life was rich, filled with events and impressions. Now her father looked at his daughter completely differently. Elena felt it and was happy about the changes. Her father no longer withdrew into himself after coming home from work. No. Stepan now shared with his daughter both his plans for the future and news from work. Father and daughter went on vacation several times. As grandmother had once asked, Stepan showed Elena the big cities of Russia: St. Petersburg, Moscow, Samara, Kazan. The girl was surprised and delighted, looking around. And Stepan sincerely enjoyed her reaction. These were such wonderful trips. Elena found out that her father was a very smart and erudite person. He was knowledgeable in a variety of areas: architecture, history, archaeology, culture, and was happy to share this knowledge with his daughter. The first summer after her grandmother passed away, Elena and her father came to Novopetrovka. The man prepared the house for the owner's long absence. He closed the windows with shutters, wrapped the furniture in plastic, threw out excess junk from the attic and basement. And Stepan also found real treasures. Thick albums with photographs that his grandmother had kept so carefully. Here was the entire family history, from her grandparents' ancestors to Elena. The father took this archive home to their city apartment. It took only a couple of days to prepare the house. During this time, Elena felt as if she had returned to the past. Familiar and native places, smiling neighbors, old friends who missed her so much. When her father told the girl that it was time to return, Elena even had tears in her eyes. "How can I return? We've tried so little here." "Well, I have to go to work, and I've already finished all my business. Why should we stay?" The father had not yet gotten to know his own daughter very well. He could not understand the girl's worries. But Dmitry Sergeyevich, of course, guessed everything right away. "Let her stay with me for at least a couple of weeks," the elderly man said to Stepan. "My granddaughters have come to visit me." The three of them have been friends since birth, and they miss each other. They will go for walks, run to the river and into the forest, and breathe fresh air. What happiness! Anything is better than the girls spending all day in a stuffy concrete box. Suffer while you are at work. It's strange somehow, Stepan drawled uncertainly. You, Uncle Dim, are like nobody to her. What do you mean nobody? The old man was indignant. She is, you could say, like my third granddaughter. I have been babysitting her ever since. These words of the elderly neighbor echoed in Elena's heart with warmth. She looked at her father imploringly. To spend at least a few weeks in her beloved Novopetrovka in the company of her best friends, that would be happiness. Her father agreed. Elena jumped for joy. And Karina and Marina jumped with her. It was a wonderful time. Everything as always. Games with friends until late, familiar places, neighbors who have known you since birth. Only Grandma was not around, and her house looked out onto the road with boarded-up shutters. Sadness periodically squeezed the girl's heart. Those around her sensitively caught these changes in Elena's mood and tried to support her. With them, the girl felt better. And then her father came for his daughter, and it was all over. Elena cried as she left for the city. Her friends hugged her. Dmitry Sergeyevich stroked the girl's head. It's okay, don't cry, don't make a mess. You're not leaving forever. When you have your autumn holidays, let your father bring you here to rest. We are all glad to see you here. Elena understood that the elderly neighbor was not saying this for the sake of a catchphrase. She was really always welcome in Novopetrovka. This awareness of this simple truth made her soul lighter and warmer. But Elena never came to Novopetrovka for the holidays again. Soon after her departure, Dmitry Sergeyevich ended up in the hospital. A stroke. He pulled through then, but he could no longer live alone in the village. Dmitry Sergeyevich was taken in by his daughter, the mother of Marina and Karina. The family lived in another city, so Elena never saw her childhood friends or her kind neighbor again. Another blow of fate. Another one. Be that as it may, the girl still got used to the new reality. The relationship with her father became more sincere and warm. Everyday life improved. Life was not so bad. At least, there was always a loved one next to Elena, ready to support and listen. And the girl appreciated it. But her father, he increasingly talked about wanting to return to the sea. You see, this is my element. Waves, wind, sea air, and space. Nothing for kilometers around. It takes your breath away. Elena understood. She understood perfectly well what it was like when the heart begins to beat joyfully at the sight of your favorite landscapes. And we don't have enough money, Stepan complained. Those who go on voyages are paid several times more, but here on land, the salaries are completely different. Elena didn't think they needed anything. They had everything they needed, and even more. They dressed nicely, ate well, traveled. But her father still dreamed of more and often recalled his previous earnings. Well, I'm already an adult, Elena once reasonably noted. I'm 13. I've been going to school by myself for a long time, and I've known how to cook since childhood. Why don't you come back? I see how much you miss the sea. I can manage on my own. Oh, no, you're still a child. You can't be left alone for so long. You never know what might happen. What could happen? The girl was genuinely perplexed. She felt independent enough to live a month or two alone. Yes, it will be boring without Dad, of course, but she will cope. According to the law, you can't be left alone. You are only 13. The neighbors will find out. They will call the guardianship authorities. Yes, the neighbors here are strange, not like in Novopetrovka, agreed Elena. And how will you feel about the fact that you will have a nanny? A nanny, snorted Elena. What am I, some kind of brat? Well, if I go on a voyage, you need someone to look after you. It will not be a nanny for little ones, but rather a housekeeper, your assistant in the household. I don't need any assistant, muttered Elena. But she already understood that her father would not leave her alone anyway. It is not allowed. Okay, hire your own housekeeper. The girl waved her hand. Her father, having decided to return to sea, immediately perked up. Now he smiled and joked a lot. Stepan looked like an absolutely happy person. Elena was happy looking at her parent, but she was also a little worried. What if she couldn't find a common language with this woman who was supposed to look after her and the house? What if it turned out to be some nasty woman? The search for the ruler's house was not going very well. The father contacted many agencies and called the ads himself, but he only came across nannies for babies. These were pensioners or students who were ready to spend several hours a day with a small child for a fee. But no one agreed to live with the teenager and look after the apartment. However, the father did not lose hope of finding such a person. He who seeks will always find, he optimistically declared to his daughter, having suffered another failure. One day, Stepan returned from a friend's birthday party in high spirits. It was late evening. Elena was sitting over a difficult math homework assignment when a happy parent came up to her and said that everything was settled. What's settled? The girl did not understand. I found you a nanny, that is, a housekeeper. That's the best option you could come up with. Elena tensed up a little. After all, they were talking about her fate. Can you tell me more? The girl asked. And the father told his daughter the story of this fateful, as it would later turn out, meeting. Stepan came to his friend's birthday party. They had once graduated from university together, and then even worked on the same ship. Later, the old friends' paths diverged, but warm, friendly relations remained between them. Semyon was celebrating an anniversary. On this occasion, the man decided to throw a big celebration in a restaurant. Among the guests were many people whom Stepan saw for the first time, including Inga, an acquaintance of Semyon's wife. The tall, slender woman looked beautiful, stylish, and tastefully dressed, smiling, friendly. At some point, Inga and Stepan started talking. Both had already had a little to drink and relaxed. The evening flowed into the revelation phase. It was time for fascinating and frank life stories. It turned out that Inga had recently divorced her husband. Or rather, according to the woman, her husband simply threw her and her daughter out on the street because of a stupid quarrel. How could this man do this to his child? Stepan was indignant. I have a daughter myself. Svetlana is not his daughter, Inga sighed. She is my child from my first marriage. My husband, now ex-husband, was never able to accept someone else's daughter. He never I loved. Inga found herself in a desperate situation. There was a catastrophic lack of money to rent an apartment. The woman could not find a good job, since she had no education or experience. Inga devoted herself entirely to her husband and daughter. She looked after the house, cooked delicious meals for her husband, organized the household, and he, a successful businessman, provided the family with money. Inga felt quite happy and protected, but, without suspecting it, she was in a very vulnerable position, since she was completely financially dependent on her husband. And now I am alone, in such a dire situation, grabbing any part-time jobs to feed myself and Sveta. My parents have long been gone. There is nowhere to expect help. Then a friend invited me to a party, said that I needed to at least get away from everything. But I still think about my problems all the time. Yes, and I still thought that I was in a hopeless situation, Stepan drawled. Of course, it's much harder for you. I hope everything will work out for you in the end. For my part, I'll try to help you with your job. It seems like our shipping company needs a secretary. And what happened to you? Inga, ignoring the potential job offer, latched onto the words hopeless situation. And Stepan told this sensitive, beautiful woman everything. About the death of his beloved wife during childbirth, about his daughter, about the mother who raised the girl until she was 10, about the difficulties of adapting to his own child when Elena was suddenly left without the care of a loving grandmother, and about his dream of the sea, of course, and also about someone like a nanny for his daughter, but no one agrees. People offer hourly nanny services for little ones, but no one wants to live with a teenager and look after the house. Inga's eyes lit up after this confession from the man. Really? Don't you understand that our meeting today is not an accident? The woman exclaimed. This is just a miracle. Providence itself brought us together. Much later it would turn out that it was not Providence that brought Stepan and Inga together. The wife of the hero of the day was aware of the situation of her husband's friend, and she really wanted to help her friend who found herself in a dire situation. The women specially arranged a meeting between Inga and Stepan at the party. Both believed that this was a wonderful way out for both the woman and the single man. How old is your child? Inga clarified. 13. And my daughter Svetlana is 15. I know how to raise teenage girls. I know how to find an approach to them. I love communicating with them. We will definitely get along. Stepan thought about it. He needed a housekeeper, that's true, but he was counting on a professional employee of a specialized agency, and here, Inga, and with a daughter too. But on the other hand, time is running out, the flight is about to leave, and the problem has not yet been solved. Your girl will soon enter adolescence. It is a very dangerous period. I know, Svetishka, and I have already passed it. At this age, children need special care, otherwise it is not far from trouble. Inga spoke convincingly and looked quite confident. Stepan thought about it. Indeed, this woman has a huge experience of communicating with children. After all, her daughter is a little older than Elena. The girls will have fun together. They will definitely find a common language. Besides, Inga is a real beauty. Stepan liked her company. She was very personable. After thinking about it, the man agreed. I think this is a great option. He smiled at Inga, who he liked more and more. A strong woman who had withstood many blows of fate and still did not break. That was how she learned to be kind, nice, smart, sensitive. Yes, this was exactly the kind of person Stepan would like to see next to Elena. Inga and her daughter Svetlana moved into Stepan and Elena's apartment. The man settled them in the living room. There was enough space there. At first, both Inga and Svetlana seemed nice and kind to Elena. Wow, what cool hair you have! Sveta admired as soon as she saw the girl. Can I try to braid your hair? Elena shrugged. She never bothered much with her hair. She did a neat ponytail before school and that was it. But Svetlana had created a stylish braided hairstyle on Elena's head, which suited the girl incredibly. Elena admired her reflection in the mirror. You're a beauty. Sveta smiled. You too. Elena babbled. And it was the pure truth. Both Svetlana and her mother were real beauties. Tall, slender, big-eyed. Such women always attract attention. Such women invariably turn around to look at men. Moreover, both Sveta and Inga knew how to advantageously emphasize the advantages of their appearance. They chose the right outfits, skillfully applied makeup, made beautiful and very stylish hairstyles. At first, Elena perceived all this as magic. In her and her father's house, there was never any cosmetics or overcrowded clothes and closets. The girl watched Inga's movements, fascinated. She once wore makeup in front of the mirror. Interesting. Huh? The woman smiled, noticing the girl's gaze one day. Come on, sit next to me. I'll show you how it's done. And in half an hour, Inga had turned Elena into a completely different person. In the mirror, the girl saw not herself, but a beautiful girl with mermaid eyes, a delicate blush on her cheeks, and plump doll lips. You're gorgeous, Inga admired. Always walk like that. But Elena couldn't always walk like that. Yes, it was beautiful, of course, but she didn't like the feeling of makeup on the girl's face at all. And it was a pity to waste time. First apply makeup, then wash it off. It could take an hour for everything. Inga and Svetlana gave Elena what she lacked so much: female attention. They went shopping together and chose outfits, gossiped, discussed films and stars. Before school, Svetlana always braided Elena's hair. She did wonderful hairstyles, stylish, beautiful, comfortable. And Inga and Sveta also helped the girl with her wardrobe. Your clothes are somehow baggy and gray, Inga said discontentedly, inspecting the girl's closet. They don't allow you to wear anything else at school. Elena threw up her hands. Somehow, she had never thought about this issue before. Nonsense. You can always find something that will fit within the regulations and look nice. Svetlana, I think it's time for us to go shopping. Are you with us? You have simply wonderful taste. We will need your advice. Of course, with you. I love shopping. Inga and Svetlana really picked out clothes for Elena that made her look like a princess. Tight lace blouses, slightly cropped skirts, high-heeled shoes. Well, that's different, Inga rejoiced, looking at her charge. You have a wonderful figure. You are slender, long-legged. Why hide all this under shapeless fleece? You might as well put on a potato sack. Elena had never received so many compliments at school. For the first time in her life, she felt not like a smart girl, but a real beauty, and it was wonderful. Svetlana became a real older friend for Elena, almost a sister, whom the girl always dreamed of. She was older. Svetlana told the girl about her relationships with guys and girlfriends. It was so exciting that Elena even forgot to breathe. Like a TV series, only everything is real. Svetlana turned out to be a wonderful storyteller. Her speech flowed smoothly and measuredly, and pictures from the life of this beautiful girl arose before Elena's eyes. Elena admired Svetlana, whispering again. Inga looked into their room. "Let's go watch our movie already. The pizza has been delivered." Those were wonderful days. Elena felt like a part of an exquisite feminine world. Father. The girl adored him, but he couldn't give her all this girlish stuff. It turned out that Elena needed this kind of communication. She hadn't even suspected it before. When Inga found out that Elena could cook well, she was absolutely delighted. "Wow," the woman admired, seeing the girl take a baking sheet with pies out of the oven. Did you do this yourself?" "Yes," Elena answered, not without pride. "My grandmother taught me. I've been able to do this for a long time." Elena was tired of the food ordered from the restaurant, and she decided to pamper Inga and Svetlana with homemade pastries. "This is divine," Sveta praised, biting off a large piece of the pie. "I've never tried anything like this. But it's bad for your figure, of course. At your age, it's not scary," Inga smiled. "But you, Elena, really surprise me. You won't believe it, but I still haven't learned how to bake. And you're so young, and already such a good girl." Elena blossomed from these compliments. Now, to please Inga and Svetlana, the girl tried to cook something every day. She really did much better than Inga. The woman's soups often turned out to be too thin and oversalted, and the casseroles were constantly burnt on top and did not soak the inside. That's why Inga preferred to order food delivery. It was easy for Elena to cook dinner or lunch for the three of them. The girl did it with joy. Svetlana and Inga, they cared about her so much, taught her so much. And then her father returned. Inga and Sveta moved back to their rented apartment. And Elena, she was very upset by this fact. Elena now missed heart-to-heart talks with girls, trips to cafes, and shops. The girl missed Inga and Svetlana, who showed her a completely different side of life, one that Elena had no idea about. Her father, of course, asked his daughter how she lived in his absence. Elena described Inga and Svetlana in the brightest colors. "They are so cool, you can't imagine." She shared her impressions with her parent. "It's so interesting with them, so good." Her father smiled. The girl saw that he was pleased with her stories. A month passed, and Stepan was sent on a voyage again, this time for an even longer period than the first time. And again Inga and her daughter came to look after Elena. Time flew by unnoticed, and when her father returned, Inga and Svetlana did not leave anywhere. They stayed in the apartment, which Elena was incredibly happy about. The girl noticed, of course, that her father looked at Inga in a special way. And the woman herself, although she tried to hide it, clearly sympathized with her employer. But Elena thought that all this was just her imagination, that she was just passing off wishful thinking as reality. It turned out not to be so. Yes, everything had been heading that way for a long time. Svetlana looked at Elena as if she were a small child when she shared her impressions of what was happening with her. "I had no doubt that it would be like this. I was just a little mistaken in the timing." "Well, yes, Sveta. She is like that. Attentive, experienced, she has a diamond eye." Her father went on another trip, after which he and Inga signed the marriage certificate. They did not have a lavish wedding, they just sat together in a restaurant. Elena was then in seventh heaven. This beautiful, kind woman joined their family. She will now live with them, giving Elena the female attention the girl so needed. This is great. Elena had long dreamed of something like this. But everything turned out much better than she could have imagined. She now has not only Inga, but also Svetlana, practically an older sister, a friend who knows so many interesting things. Everything changed immediately after her father went on a trip. The stamp in the passport radically changed Inga's attitude towards her stepdaughter. Elena expected her stepmother and stepsister to behave as before, care, heart-to-heart talks, walks together, but all this suddenly stopped. Inga went to her friends and beauty salons. Svetlana also lived her own life, friends, admirers, nightclubs. And Elena, she was all alone. Alone again. They suddenly stopped paying attention to her. The only thing the girl was praised for was cooking and cleaning. Alena cleaned the entire apartment on her own and cooked mind-blowing lunches and dinners just to earn Inga's approval. She didn't understand what was going on. The stepmother praised the girl reservedly and ordered new dishes for the next day. Sometimes Inga would ask Elena to wipe the floors. That was all the communication. Elena felt confused and deceived. "Svet, tell me, how did you hang out at the club?" the girl once asked Svetlana. She looked at Elena absent-mindedly and didn't answer. When the girl repeated her question, Svetlana sighed heavily and grumbled. "You're so clingy, just some kind of clingy. It's impossible to be around you." This was a blow for Elena. She thought that she and Svetlana were friends. The girl used to willingly share details of her life with her. They talked a lot, walked together. Sveta gave Elena invaluable advice on makeup and clothing combinations, and now, like this. And then more. Inga got a taste for it. Now Elena had all the housework to do. The stepmother practically did not cook in the absence of her husband. It was the stepdaughter's responsibility. Things were the same with cleaning. If before the girl was at least praised for her help around the house, now she received only comments and reproaches if she didn't have time to do something. And it was hard. After all, Elena still had her studies and music school. Of course, the girl grades have worsened. It is impossible to do everything around the house and study well at the same time. Elena tried to explain to Inga that she could not cope. "I am tired. I do not have time to do my homework. I have missed music school many times already. Let Sveta cook and clean at least sometimes." This, my dear, is called laziness. Inga looked at her stepdaughter with an indifferent look. "Nothing supernatural is required of you. Didn't you know that people who live together share household chores equally?" Equally. That was already too far from the truth. There was no talk of any equal shares. Svetlana lived for her own pleasure, met with friends, ran on dates, often went shopping, and to beauty salons. Sometimes underage Sveta did not even come home for the night. Inga called her, and even went somewhere at night from time to pick up her wayward daughter. Only her father knew nothing about this side of Svetlana's life. In his presence, the girl behaved impeccably. Sveta did nothing. Absolutely nothing around the house, and Elena even had to make her bed. "Svetashka is preparing for her final exams," Inga said in response to Elena's fair comments. At first, the girl tried to defend herself. "You only have 2 years to enroll, and she's about 2. But Elena had never seen Sveta with a textbook in her hands. The girl attended school reluctantly and had big problems with her studies. The young lady only had dates and parties on her mind, and she was exclusively concerned with her own appearance. Sveta was constantly visiting beauticians and beauty salons. This, of course, bore fruit. The girl looked simply magnificent. Well-groomed, spectacular, stylish. Inga spent the lion's share of the money that her father left for the household on herself and her daughter. And Lenya got what was left. Inga fussed around the kitchen and the house only when her father was home, creating the image of an ideal housewife. The woman did not work. She explained to her husband that now the girls needed special care. A difficult age and all that. An eye on teenagers during this period. Stepan agreed with Inga's arguments. In general, she knew how to convince others that her decisions were reasonable and beneficial to everyone. This was her talent. Stepan even sincerely believed that he himself suggested that his wife take care of the house and children. And he appreciated this, as he thought, sacrifice of Inga. To lay down a career on the altar of happiness and well-being of the family is practically a feat. Inga had a huge influence on her father. He looked at her with admiring eyes, believed every word of his wife, considered her ideal and infallible. Alena used to like this. She was happy for her loved one. So many years alone, and now, finally, he found his love. But now the girl was hurt and even scared. Inga was gradually turning from a kind, sensitive woman into a monster. The stepmother made increasingly high demands on Elena. The girl was showered with reproaches every day. And she cooks incorrectly, and cleans too slowly, and pays too much attention to nonsense. "What are you strumming on that bandura of yours?" Inga pointed her finger, decorated with an impeccable manicure, at the guitar with disdain. "Your boring songs are already giving me a headache." Elena was silent. She knew that if she opened her mouth and tried to defend herself, she would be inundated with a whole stream of insults. This was already a thing of the past. It was better to remain silent, so the stepmother would calm down faster. Yes, Inga did not like Elena's passion for music. She called the girl untalented more than once, constantly asked her to play more quietly, as if that was possible. She forced her stepdaughter to skip classes at the music school. But music was a real salvation for the girl. Playing calmed her down, relaxed her, gave her joy. But there was already too little joy in Elena's life. Inga, of course, behaved completely differently with her father. Elena could not get used to these metamorphoses. A sensitive, anxious parent, a wonderful housewife, a loving wife. Her father often repeated how lucky he was to meet such a woman. Inga, however, was slowly turning the man against his daughter. Carefully, delicately, masterfully. The woman disguised herself. She appeared to Stepan as a worried parent. Alyanishka has entered puberty. That's what she's become. She snaps, she's lazy, she hates everyone around her. She's dropped out of school. She has no time for that. She only thinks about partying, just sneaking out of the house. That's what Inga told her father, not particularly caring that Elena wouldn't hear her conversation. The woman didn't care. The man wouldn't believe his daughter's words if she tried to justify herself. Inga's influence was too strong. The woman manipulated those around her too skillfully. What should I do? Stepan looked at his wife, puzzled. He was waiting for advice, help, support. Of course, the man loved his daughter and didn't want her to slide into the abyss. Yes, Inga used such vivid, figurative expressions to be convincing. I think she needs to leave music school, her stepmother once suggested. Elena spends too much time on nonsense, and her studies suffer. It seems to me that under the name of music school she is hanging out with bad company. I talked to the teacher from the music school. There are continuous truancies there. The father, as usual, agreed with Inga. Her words always had a decisive meaning. When the man announced to his daughter that she would no longer study music, Elena immediately understood whose doing it was. The girl openly objected for the first time. She defended the work of her life and therefore suddenly became bold and decisive. No, I don't want to quit music school. Inga, she just wants me to spend more time at home and do all the housework. I cook, clean, wash. I'm like a servant here while you are away. You see. Inga looked at her husband and looked upset and worried. See how she reacts. And I'm just teaching the child to work. Nothing special. In all normal families, children have some small responsibilities. But Elena only needs partying and freedom. It's dangerous at that age. Look at your daughter. Elena couldn't take it anymore. Keep an eye on her. The girl couldn't take it anymore and lost her temper. This played into Inga's hands. She pretended to be an understanding woman who wasn't offended by the hot-tempered teenager, but was just worried about him, wishing him well. Elena had tried to complain to her father about Inga before, but he didn't take her words seriously. Well, of course, his new wife is so perfect. You're just jealous. Stepan stroked his daughter's head. I'll try to pay more attention to you. Whatever Elena said, it sounded unconvincing because her father was constantly Inga, an experienced manipulator, was handling it. And after this open quarrel, Elena's words ceased to have any meaning for Stepan. At least, the girl thought so. By the way, Elena still had to leave the music school. Her father insisted. The girl lost her only outlet. Of course, she played for herself from time to time. This at least somehow relieved the stress that Elena was now constantly under. From time to consolidate the effect, Inga pitted her father and daughter against each other. She played with people like chess pieces. The father was at the mercy of his charming wife. He was completely confident that puberty had turned his sweet daughter into a monster, and he thanked fate for the fact that during this difficult period the girl had an experienced and attentive woman next to her. At first, Elena still tried to get through to her parent, but each time after that, Inga arranged something new. One day, Sveta took money from the family stash. Elena knew this. The girl heard Svetlana begging her mother for money to go to St. Petersburg with friends. She refused, explaining that she did not like the girl's company at all. But Svetlana was not used to restrictions. She went to St. Petersburg anyway, which infuriated Inga. She scolded her daughter on the phone, threatened her, ordered her to return immediately. Of course, Svetlana did not even think of obeying. She was not that kind of person. Of course, both Inga and Elena understood where the girl got the money. Stepan's stash. But when the father returned, the stepmother blamed Elena for everything. Svetlana was already at home at that time and pretended to be an exemplary high school student. She took after her mother in acting skills and perhaps even surpassed her. The father did not scold his daughter then, no. He talked to her for a long time, trying to find out why the girl needed such a sum. Maybe you got into trouble. Maybe you need help. Alena tried to explain to her parent how things really were. He shrank even more, as if from severe pain, and begged her not to deceive him. Tell the truth, the father asked, taking his daughter by the hands. What's happening to you? Alena said nothing more. It's useless. Her father considers her a difficult teenager, capable of stealing. What can you say? Inga's words turned out to be a powerful tool. The man does not trust his daughter, but he takes every word of his wife at face value. And the girl could do nothing about it. Time passed. The moment of Svetlana's admission to the university was approaching. Alena understood that the girl would fail miserably. I wonder how the stepmother would explain this to her father. After all, she had worked hard all these years on the image of her daughter. In her stories, Svetlana appeared as a smart girl, a diligent student, a gifted girl. Inga constantly compared the girls, and Svetlana invariably surpassed Elena in everything. But it's okay, Inga convinced her husband. Since I raised one girl to be so successful, I can handle your daughter too. I know how to raise girls. At a certain age, they need a firm hand. Father agreed with Inga, and with a light heart, handed over to her all rights to raise Elena. You know better how it should be, he answered his wife. Elena. She somehow even got used to such a life. Reproaches, ridicule, indifference. Shifting the burden onto the shoulders of a teenager, most household chores, restrictions in everything. Elena sometimes felt like Cinderella. Inga was a kind of textbook stepmother. They say correctly, a fairy tale is a lie of an old hint. And then, in the absence of her father, Victor began to visit Inga. A young man, stylishly dressed, always smiling and polite. The woman explained to the girls that he was her distant relative. But Victor looked at Inga with such eyes that Elena understood that her stepmother was lying. Svetlana did not believe her mother either. She smiled sarcastically every time this guest appeared in the house. Now Inga could afford not to come home for the night, and Elena understood perfectly well what was happening. She was not a little girl anymore. Her stepmother had a lover. This same Victor. Young, handsome, charming, head over heels in love. The girl was offended for her father. He trusted his wife so much, and the girl also tried to understand why Inga needed this man. After all, the stepmother never did anything for no reason. If she did bring a person closer to her, it was only to get something out of him. So Victor appeared in Inga's life for a reason. Although, maybe it was all about feelings. He is a handsome man, reminds me of the male models from magazines. He even looks at him in a special way. Elena tried to convey to her father what was going on. Carefully, she told him about the man who sometimes came to their house, and Inga's absences, which had become the norm. Her father frowned. Are you telling the truth? Are you not trying to blackmail again? You are always arguing. Dad, it's true. The girl almost screamed. She felt that her father did not fully believe her, but she still planted a seed of doubt in his soul. Of course, Stepan talked to his wife. She told him something about a relative who had arrived for a short time from another city. And then she started complaining again about Elena, who was constantly lying and arguing with everyone just out of a desire to express her protest. Elena heard every word her stepmother said. The girl clenched her fists in impotent rage. Inga looked and sounded, as always, very convincing. Not like her, unoffended, maturing girl with problematic behavior. Stepan did not know what to do. At least leave his dream job again and return to the mainland. True, now it will be even harder to do. After all, he supports not only himself and his daughter, but also two people. He took on responsibility, which means he must provide for the family with dignity. Elena is completely out of control. She probably needs her father nearby, but how to leave the ship? Earning pennies is not an option now. And Inga, charming, delightful, smart, subtle. Stepan lost his head over this woman at first sight. They met at the jubilee of a mutual friend at the right time, and then it turned out that Inga and Stepan could help each other, as if a puzzle had come together. At first, Alena was delighted with her stepmother and stepsister. Her daughter's eyes were shining with a happy light. She was so happy that Inga and Sveta moved in with them. Then, leaving on a trip, Stepan was calm. His daughter was in good hands. Returning home also became much more pleasant. What happiness it is when your beloved woman is eagerly waiting for you, and such a beauty at that. Stepan had forgotten that this could happen. The man envied himself. And then that notorious transitional age began for Elena. It was as if the child had been replaced. The girl was now lazy and snapped, lied and skipped classes, tried to set her stepmother and father at odds. She made up stories about Inga and Sveta, responded inadequately to ordinary requests, and once even took a decent amount from the family piggy bank. I wonder what she needed that kind of money for. Stepan was afraid that his daughter had gotten involved with a bad crowd, especially since Inga thought so too. Alena constantly complained about her stepmother. No wonder. After all, she raised her stepdaughter, limited her freedom, and, horror of horrors, forced her to clean up after herself. It was much nicer to laze around all day, not bother yourself with lessons and household chores. To live for your own pleasure. Of course, Inga was now bothering the girl. That's why she was furious. Stepan understood this. But he did not know how to help his daughter survive this difficult age with the least losses. He never understood Alena at all. It's a pity that the maternity hospital doesn't give out instructions for using the baby along with the child. And now Alena has crossed all the boundaries of what is permissible. She hinted that Inga has a lover, some Victor. His wife didn't deny it. Indeed, her relative, who recently moved to their city, was coming to visit them. A busy young man who never found time to meet Stepan. Works a lot, tries to make his way in this life. But Alena, she assures that Inga is a lying monster, and that Victor is her lover. Stepan looked into his daughter's honest eyes and was horrified. Has Alyonka really become a slanderer and a deceiver? This is so unlike her. That's when the man decided to install a hidden surveillance camera in the apartment. He will set it to record. The videos will be broadcast to his phone online. The next time he comes, he will provide Alena with evidence. She will see the recordings, understand how stupid and ugly her attempts to denigrate Inga look. Maybe something will click in her head, and the girl will come to her senses. Nothing sobers you up as much as looking at yourself from the outside. Stepan did not expect to see this at all. At first, he still felt guilty, spying on his family, as if he did not trust them. Good. Nothing to say. But the recordings at the camera broadcast turned his whole consciousness upside down. Inga really treated Alena like a servant. She looked at her with disdain, forced the girl to work for the whole family. And these were duties beyond the strength of a teenager. Alena did not just clean up after herself and carry out simple errands. She kept the whole house clean, scrubbed the plumbing, cooked lunches and dinners, and received only reproaches and insults for this. No, when Stepan was at home, Inga did not behave like that. The man did not believe his eyes. His heart bled when Alena appeared before his eyes in the role of a powerless Cinderella. So, Inga really is lying. She lies to him all the time, with such honest and devoted eyes. And Alena, how many times had she tried to get through to her father, and he did not believe a single word of his daughter? What a horror! Poor girl! If he could, the man would now travel hundreds of kilometers and protect his daughter. Well, with his own hands he made his own child's life a nightmare. And the girl had turned to him for help. But Stepan didn't believe her. His daughter's words sounded like pathetic excuses. Alena's stories about Victor were also confirmed. Indeed, to their home sometimes a young man would come in, and he would hug Inga in a way that was far from family. Sparks were flying between Inga and Victor. The camera turned out to be of good quality. Stepan heard every word the couple said. Victor turned out to be an experienced and very expensive lawyer, and Inga would definitely not have had the money for his services. So she took the usual route and used her strongest charms. Yes, Inga and Victor were lovers. The young lawyer was probably under the influence of the woman's natural magnetism, and she, of course, was pursuing her own goal. Stepan soon realized what it was. A plot of land in Novopetrovka. Stepan's mother left the house and garden to her granddaughter. Inga knew about this and was looking for a way to sell the property. She needed money. Svetlana, the woman's biological daughter, would not have entered the university on a budget. The girl never bothered herself with her studies, and miracles, as we know, do not happen. That's why Inga needed a decent amount of money, enough to pay for Sveta's education. The woman knew perfectly well that Stepan, no matter how much he was in love with her, would never agree to such a thing. That's why she needed Victor. As Elena's guardian, Inga had the right to manage her stepdaughter's property until she came of age. The woman was going to pull off a scheme, sell the house in Novopetrovka, and pay for Svetlana's education with the proceeds. But Stepan was not supposed to find out about this. Victor, as an experienced lawyer, helped his mistress in this matter. Inga, like no one else, knew how to manipulate people. Realizing what was happening, Stepan clenched his fists in impotent anger. Elena can't be left alone with these terrible people. There is still a lot of time left until the end of the trip. It is difficult to interrupt the business trip, but Stepan will do it. Elena is in danger. Elena tried her best to hold back her tears. The last thing she needed was for Sveta to see how hard it was for her. She and her mother were deliberately driving her to breakdowns. The girl had made ugly scenes in front of her father more than once because she could no longer hold it all in. This played into the hands of her stepmother. Now Inga accused Elena of vagrancy. The stepmother diligently creates an image of a wayward daughter in the eyes of her father. Rude, lazy, and now even parting. Elena had just spent the night at a friend's. She warned Inga about this over the phone. "Do whatever you want," the stepmother said indifferently into the phone. "I don't care." Of course, she didn't care. The day before, Elena had scrubbed the entire apartment and cooked for a couple of days. Otherwise, the stepmother would not have let her out of the house. Returning home in the morning, Elena found police officers in the apartment. At first, the girl decided that it was Svetlana. She often disappeared at night. Inga periodically went to get her daughter out of trouble. "Have you found the missing girl?" the policeman asked the tearful Inga. She shook her head. And then the girl realized what was going on. The stepmother reported to the police that her underage stepdaughter had not come home to spend the night, although she knew perfectly well where she was. "But I warned you that I would stay at my friend's," Elena said in amazement, looking at her stepmother. The girl had already guessed that the woman had come up with a new way to expose her stepdaughter to troubled teenagers, this time involving the police. "You're lying again," the woman sobbed. "What should I do with you? One more trick like that, and we'll put her on record," the official warned as he left the apartment. On record. Perhaps that's what my stepmother was trying to achieve. And now Elena was trying not to cry, hunched over on her bed. The girl was hugging the teddy bear that Dmitry Sergeyevich had once given her, and she understood that she would once again be presented to her father as a lost girl. And he, as always, would unconditionally believe his wife, would look at his daughter with sad, anxious eyes that looked full of pain and disappointment. It was so hard to bear. Suddenly the key turned in the door. Elena perked up. Who could it be? Svetlana and Inga were home. Her father would be at sea for another 3 weeks. Had Inga really given the key to that Victor of hers? That was all she needed. But her father's voice rang out in the hallway. "I'm home. You're back. So soon." Inga's voice sounded confused and at the same time cloyingly joyful. "What happiness! I know everything." The father clearly did not share his wife's delight. "I saw and heard everything. Pack your things. You have until the evening. You will not do anything more to my daughter. Nothing." Elena's heart began to beat like a bird locked in a cage. She rushed into the hallway and hung on her father's neck. How did he know about everything? Elena would find out later. And now it did not even matter. Stepan held his daughter in a tight embrace. He smelled of the sea. "Now everything will be fine," the man said. "Forgive me for not believing you. I will not let anyone hurt you again."